Come to order. Please simmer down. Thank you. Oh, got everybody but those people in the back. I got them too. Very good. Welcome to the NID board meeting of Wednesday, November 8th. Are you guys ready to go? Good. I'll call the meeting to order, and please rise for the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, we'll move to a public comment on items not on the agenda, but I believe Director Drew has a very brief comment he'd like to make first.
Ram, and everybody here, in light of the hatred that's floating around our country nowadays, the board has just received a letter. I would like you to forward that letter to the Chief of Police in Grass Valley and to the Sheriff. Thank you.
I think that's my copy. Or at least I'm not sure what it was. Okay. And if anyone's interested in the contents of that letter, you can ask the board secretary or somebody at a later time. Very good.
You're going to not have the person's name on there. You're not going to include the person's name.
Yes, that probably should be redacted.
And their address is on it.
Okay.
We don't even know if that's who it is or if the address is accurate. But the police will need to know the person's name and his address.
Yeah.
A lot of swastikas.
Everybody wants to know what's going on. People in the audience want to know what's going on.
Okay, I'll read the letter into the record. Fair enough. We received a letter from a customer, I think. It says that, I don't know what he came in here for. Maybe he was paying his bill. I'm not sure. Note, the Centennial Dam is a damn bad idea. The NID board members are effing morons like Herr Trump. It is my sincere hope that these ugly pricks end up in prison, just like their money-grubbing counterparts, swastika, 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 swastika. When the board and Trump are gone, the world will be a better place, and no more swastikas. Thank you. That's the letter. Okay, enough of that. Public comment, please. Good morning, and please state your name for the record.
My name's Steve Kirschbaum, and my comment has to do with the gate at the spillway at Scotts Flat Lake. And so I think it's been made clear that it's having a negative impact on many members of the community, and I think it's good that NID has agreed to set up committees to work for a better solution. I haven't seen any further work on that issue, but I think it would be good in the meantime to open the gate while this process is being resolved. I don't think the issues that NID was having, the problems during the summer, would be with illegal camping and vandalism and that kind of thing would be much of an issue during the winter. I imagine that eventually the solution will end up with the gate at least being open at some times. So maybe now, at least during the day, it could remain open. And also, frankly, these months are the best months for locals to walk and ride down there because there aren't campers and boats and that kind of thing. So it's just a very important part of people's lives up here. So I just want to request to be open during this process. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning, Board. Peter Van Zant, Ridge Estates Road, and I'm an NID customer, happily. Last Thursday night, there was a spirited exchange at Lake Wildwood. They sponsored a forum on Centennial, and several of us represented. There were folks there, and Nick was kind enough to come and represent the project. And it was a spirited exchange, and I think we're gonna hopefully do more of those. One of the things that came up was on the issue of funding for Centennial, and the finance plan it was mentioned that revenue bonds would be a way of paying for that project if it gets that far. Revenue bonds, of course, are ones that, for a project that will make a profit, if I understand it correctly, or there will be revenue, and that revenue gets pledged to pay off the bonds, pay for the project. So that brings us back to one of the issues that we've been asking for is a finance plan, even a pro forma or something of that nature. We've heard from a number of folks that there are 5 or 6 different funding mechanisms for a project of this size and nature. So I think the project's getting pretty well defined in terms of its physical size, dimensions, location, that sort of thing. So I think it's time that NID start talking a little bit more about what the financing options are, and of course, who's going to pay. And thank you.
Thank you.
Well, good morning, Board. My name is Mike Goitzman, and I'm here today representing the YBONC, the Youth Bicyclists of Nevada County, and the Nevada Union Bike Team. I've been involved with YBONC and the NU Bike Team for the last several years as both a parent and as a ride leader and coach. And I want to reiterate to the Board the importance of the Scotts Flat Dam as a recreation corridor for the young mountain bikers in our community. Mountain biking is a healthy alternative for our youth. They have lots of opportunity to make poor choices, and we believe that mountain biking is a positive choice. And it's a draw for folks outside of this community as well. Kids who get involved with recreation activities are more likely to make healthy choices elsewhere in their life as well. The Scotts Flat Dam, I think, connects the community and the trail system to the south of the lake to the wonderful asset that we have in the Pioneer Trail and the Scotts Flat Drought community trail system to the north. And we regularly use this on the team as a corridor to connect the trails on the south as part of our regular workout. So I might add that last season on the team we had the state champions at both the freshman boys and the sophomore girl. California-wide, we had the fastest kids in California. We're very proud of that. And it's a result of the ability to give these kids the workout up here in the mountains that the Flatlanders don't get. So I think a compromise is right in front of us here. Obviously, you guys have to protect a very important asset, and I respect your right to do that. But when I looked at the pictures and I've seen the corridor, obviously you want to keep people from jumping off into the water and on the spillway, and I respect your right to put as big a fence and as much barbed wire on the to the east and the west to prevent that. But I would ask you to open up the corridor and allow us to use that for our recreation activities. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning, I'm Heidi Payne. I'm a customer at the. I'm a customer at the.
Please restate your name for the record.
Heidi Payne.
Thank you.
And I'm a customer at the Mead Canal. When we bought the property in 2003, we had a box at one end of the property. We paid to get another box put in at the other end of the property. We didn't use the original box anymore, but we were under the impression that it's still our box. It had been paid for at one time, and by the previous owner of the property. So now we would like to use that box again. So we were told that we have to pay the $1,475 installation fee again. And I don't understand why. The box is there, it's usable. Why do we have to pay again? So I would like to get an answer to that question, please.
Okay. We can't really respond to you at this point.
No, I know, but
Thank you.
how will it work? Will I get a phone call or a letter, or how do I find out?
I'll have staff contact her.
Okay, so staff will contact you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning, I'm Jane Reagan from Division 1 and Bicyclists of Nevada County. Here again to remind you of the urgency of reopening the Scotch Flat Dam crossing. This is a priority for the recreation community, and we want it to be a priority for NID as well. We'll just keep coming back until that's the case. I hope you've all now seen yesterday's letter from Supervisors Anderson and Hall supporting the reopening, so there's political will behind this too. It's come to light that NID staff's major concern is the kids jumping off the dam, and if that's correct, then there's really no need for the gates blocking all access on either end, because it doesn't further that end in any way. The fence alone would have been sufficient for, as any measure could be, to satisfy the FERC and DSOD, and certainly would have shown due diligence to them. Blocking public non-motorized access across the dam does absolutely nothing to further safety or security. And additionally, blocking this long-standing public travel route without review process may be a violation of CEQA regulations. If my understanding is correct, then to potentially close it, NID would be required to provide a scoping and comment period, analyze a range of alternatives, and disclose negative effects, none of which occurred in this case. Even your press release simply stated that NID is installing exclusion fencing along the top and along the edge of the spillway. So we in the recreation community are really sincere in our desire to work with NID to resolve this. Win-win solutions are always possible, and it's way too cold for the kids to be jumping in now anyway, so let's get the gates reopened. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment.
Good morning, Board. My name is Mike Lozano. I am a resident, also a coach with the NU mountain bike team, also here representing Wybonk. I've been a coach now for 3 years with the high school team. I've been a coach with the middle school for 6 years, and just letting you know that I don't know that I can speak and add to what's already been said, except to add that urgency for the recreation community and also the mountain biking community that uses it. These kids are taught from a very young age, not only is it a healthy lifestyle, but it's a lifestyle or stewardship. They're out there stewarding these trails, the resources, the recreational areas. These kids are taught manners on the trail. They're taught how to respect the trails and the people that use them. This is a vital corridor for us. We use it on the team all the time, as one of the other coaches have already stated. These kids are out there not only in our community, but they're also representing you throughout the state of California. So when they're talking to other mountain bike recreational users and they're talking about this corridor, the Scotch Dam Flat, that whole area is a topic of conversation that they have about the riding that they get to do up here, and then they represent it in how they perform. And so I just want to reiterate that this is a very important path for us, for the recreational community, the mountain biking community, and for our community as a whole. And I want to implore you guys once again to reopen it. Thank you.
My name is Rick Weaver. I'm an NID customer and a season pass holder for Scotts Flat Lake, as well as a resident of Cascade Shores. I'd like to express my opposition to placing the gate on the spillway. That's a major connectivity route from the Pasquale area, Red Dog Road, Cascade Shores, and the Cascade Ditch to Forest Service trails along the Highway 20 corridor that's now been denied to many trail users. I feel it's a violation of the public trust, and I also see that possibly CEQA was circumvented. And as mentioned before, there was no public scoping. As I recall, the press release from NID just said they were going to gate off the ends and the sides. Not the ends, it was the just the sides and the edges, actually is how it was phrased. And it actually has two ends. One end is still open. Residents from the Scotts Flat Road side and Highway 20 in the campground can still enter the spillway. So there's no mitigation of any safety there, or from what I can see. I'd also like to just implore the board to please reopen the gate and reestablish a long-established travel route that's been used by many recreational users for many years. Thank you.
Thank you.
Nicole Ragland, Grass Valley. Good morning, Board. Dr. Miller. I read the note that the gentleman wrote. I don't see any threats, and the swastikas aren't used as a tool to instill fear in you. I think it's a reflection of his fear of where the country is going, but that's neither here nor there. It falls under his First Amendment right to state his opinion. I'm saddened that the Grass Valley Police Department will be contacting him. As non-people of color, I'm sure that something like this is new to you. As a person of color living in the community, I've been subjected to the other end of this letter. We actually had our property defaced when we first moved into the area. My son, who is a teenager, has had things yelled at him from cars. When he was working in downtown Grass Valley, he was subjected to harassment by customers. From what I've read here, there's a lot of name calling, but no actual threats. So it does fall under their First Amendment right. I'm also here to read a statement by Jack Sanchez, who can't be here today. He wanted to let the board know that the Centennial Dam is an assault on Placer and Nevada counties and the Nisenan Nation. This month is Indigenous Peoples Month, which is sad to me because we should honor our indigenous cultures all year round. And a way to honor them is to preserve and protect the land that they unwillingly entrusted us with. That's all I have to say today. Thank you.
Almost got you, Diane. This thing is lame.
Should I wait till you get your clock ready, or can I just
you
talk?
go.
I've got it timed, don't sweat it. Diana Suarez, Colfax, California. I've been coming to these NID board meetings since February. I have heard some good ideas. One of them was last meeting when Director Miller said he swam with the salmon. I understood that dams above a river or creek can enhance that stream or river's fishery by releasing cold water at the right time of year. This would be great for our Bear River and an idea that should be pursued. The trout and all the wild fish in our river would love it. Now, I will also say, if upon hearing this idea, your immediate reaction is, no, that's not what I meant, that cannot work, then you have a set agenda and are not open to the whole range of alternatives available. It seems that NID has 10 reservoirs for a total of 280,380 acre-feet of storage. 5 watersheds contain these reservoirs. The Middle Yuba has 2 reservoirs, Milton and Jackson Meadows, holding 69,500 acre-feet. Canyon Creek has 3 small reservoirs and Bowman Reservoir, holding about 89,500 acre-feet. Jackson Creek has a small 1,300 acre-foot reservoir. Deer Creek has 1 reservoir, holding 48,500 acre-feet. Then there is Bear River Watershed with 4 reservoirs and 177,588 acre-feet stored already. With the new proposal for Centennial Dam, this watershed would have 5 reservoirs holding 287,588 acre-feet. That is more than the entire current capacity of the district in one watershed, and that is overkill. No reasonable person would select the most heavily impacted watershed with the most disturbance and existing storage to build a 5th major reservoir, larger and more destructive than any other NID reservoir to date. That makes no sense. And I seriously question NID's dismal stewardship of the Bear River watershed. I have noticed that Director Drew keeps making remarks about the value of reservoirs, quote, and they got that water from a reservoir, unquote. We all know that our communities are serviced by a system of reservoirs. and many people are dependent on this system for their water, just like we mostly drive gas-powered cars. Although we apparently all believe in climate change, we participate in this system. In the time I have been coming to these meetings, I have not heard one person ask NID to take down their reservoirs. Over and over again, the message I keep hearing about Centennial Dam from the majority of people who come up here to speak is that this reservoir, this dam, in this place, at this time, is a bad idea. Thank you.
Morning, Marin Lipowitz, Cedar Ridge. I'd like to open with the pledge to the earth, if anyone would like to join me. I pledge allegiance to the earth and all the life it supports, one planet in our care, irreplaceable, with sustenance and respect for all. Today I'd like to share Chapter 3 of the Beaver Saga. Chapter 1 was the little town in England who was saved from flooding because they reintroduced beavers. Chapter 2 was the Yurok tribe in Northern California that is emulating beaver behavior to create more sensible dams. Chapter 3 today is scientists acquire more proof that only beavers can save the world. And this one relates to the fact that we have always needed nitrogen to avoid starvation, and we have been able to supply nitrogen through the use of fertilizers. But an unfortunate side effect of that is that it's gotten into our streams and produced pesky algae blooms that we need to address with sometimes toxic methods. So every discovery has its drawback. Nitrogen fertilizers on farmland get washed into streams where they fuel an algae population bloom. The algae use up the oxygen in the streams, the rivers, and eventually parts of the ocean, leaving nothing for the fish and leading to large dead zones. Biologists at the University of Rhode Island were studying the nitrogen content of streams and noticed something odd. Whenever there were beaver ponds upstream, nitrogen levels dropped. Beaver ponds slow down river water, they mix it with organic matter, which must have an effect on river chemistry, and then these scientists did a mini experiment that proved the fact that indeed beavers do help with the process of denitrification. So the effect was most pronounced in small streams, which lead to bigger rivers and eventually to the ocean. Beavers often set up their homes in these tiny streams, or they did before they were trapped or driven away. Reintroducing them might completely change downstream chemistry, make these environments more livable, not just for the beavers, but for their fellow creatures as well. Now, I've said this before, I'm not saying you guys should be replaced by beavers. But what I am saying is that in this age when nature is whiplashing us mercilessly, maybe we should be asking, how do we get our projects to mimic nature instead of fighting her every step of the way? So I'd like to share this with you guys. Beavers know best. Damn it.
Give it to Chris.
What's that?
Why don't you give it to Chris for the record?
Good morning. My name is Mark DiMartini, and I'm a mountain biker with a heart condition, and I ride regularly to help me deal with that condition. And I've been a member of the community here since I was born in Grass Valley, and I really value our trail system in Nevada County, and one of the goals of our community, our riding community, is to have a connecting system of trails. And the project that NID has undertaken and installed a gate actually goes backwards on that goal, and it reverses our ability and prohibits our ability to go from one side of the Deer Creek watershed to the other, and there is no alternative route. I mean, unless you want to ride all the way up Chalk Bluff Road or go all the way back to Nevada City, there's no other alternative way to get across that area. And so it's makes a severe restriction on our ability to commute and ride around the community, and it's just the opposite of what we want. And I'd like to ask on behalf of all the other people that go through that corridor that NID consider just removing the gate and taking it down and just dealing with the issue at hand, which is the kids that are jumping off of the bridge. Thank you very much.
I'm Bob Brandstrom from the city of Grass Valley. I was appalled by the letter that you read. It was a model of the lack of civil discourse that is becoming far too frequent in our culture. And I just want to say that even if we disagree, meaning me and you, on various issues, I do not believe that any public servant deserves the kind of letter that you have received, and I offer you my thanks for your public service.
Good morning, board and staff. My name is Terry Undemer, current chairman of the board, Bear-Yuba Land Trust. As you know, Bear-Yuba Land Trust and its volunteers are highly invested in connectivity of our community's trails, and it's a way to get people out into nature and to enjoy what this community offers. We believe our community's quality of life is directly related to trail connectivity, and without the Scotts Flat Dam reopened, at least while we find an alternative, it's greatly diminishing our access to nature. Bear-Yuba Land Trust would encourage NID to reopen this gate, connecting both sides of the Deer Creek watershed, and work with local trail advocates to monitor and protect this area from further vandalism. Don't let a few ruin it for so many of us. This could be a first step in working with the community to come up with a positive resolution. This does not work, and vandalism and misuse continue. It will be in our best interest to come up with an alternative route across the drainage. We strongly encourage NID to reconsider this drastic measure brought on by a few. The best remedy is to reconstruct an alternative trail across the Deer Creek drainage. Bear-Yuba Land Trust is here, willing and able to work with you to find that alternative. We want to work with the community, and we've done a lot of trail work in the community, and we want to continue that. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Rick Kalb. I'm an NID customer. I'm going to be really short. Just want to reiterate really what Jane Williams said earlier, Jane Reagan, that there are hundreds of people in the community that are affected by closing access on Scotts Flat, and we're going to keep on working with you to come up with a solution, and I'm sure we will at some point. But the biggest thing I want to say, really what the first speaker, Steve, said, is we would really like it if we could have the gate open in the winter while we're working on the solution. I mean, there's no one swimming this time of year, and we would really appreciate, we mentioned it in the last meeting, if the gate could be reopened in the winter while we're coming up with the solution. And that's really all I want to say.
Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Chris Foyt. I am a resident of Nevada City. I am also the managing director of the CRB's Trail Stewardship. I echo all the other comments that you've heard regarding the gate on Scotts Flat Dam. It really does limit the recreational opportunities in the area, and it's unfortunate that having come to these meetings and voice our opinions, we're not really seeing any true reaction. We were here 4 weeks ago, and there seemed to be a fairly good contingent of people out in the crowd and a good representation of the staff of NID here. It seemed at the time that Vice GM Jones was open to our suggestions and was going to form an ad hoc committee to try to resolve this situation, try to get some sort of recreational opportunity restored. And 4 weeks later, it's crickets. And I'd just like to voice my disappointment in the reaction from the staff and honestly from the board in general. We would really like this to become an agenda item so you can openly discuss this and perhaps, you know, give the staff some direction, at least entice them in some way to do what they said they would do. Thank you.
Good morning, Board. My name is Tracy Sheehan, and I'm with the Foothills Water Network. And I'm here to talk more or ask questions on Centennial Dam. In February of 2016, NID announced that the Centennial review process would begin. I think that's it was either January, February, March, right around that period of time. And during that time, it was explained to us and the public in a meeting what the process would be, and that the release of those public documents, according to CEQA, that people have been talking about today, would happen in about the spring of 2017. And then that was pushed off, understandably, to the fall of 2017. And I think about till even within the last month, there's been anticipation of the release of those documents in the fall. We've been bracing ourselves to finally see those public documents. But a few weeks ago, we found a letter to the state board having to do with the water rights part of Centennial Dam, explaining that the DEIR, those first public documents, would be released in fall of 2018. Last week, Director Wilcox made a presentation to a group at Lake Wildwood explaining that the documents would be released in spring of 2018. So I'm here to ask the question of specifically when will the DEIR be released, and what is the date, and then also what's the reason behind that delay. Second, I have a question in terms of the public process. Obviously, first, in how this is communicated to the public, because it would be nice to even just understand like what quarter it would be released in. So how do we communicate when those deadlines are and the public can have certainty of when that's going to happen? But also, Director Wilcox described an alternative public process that I don't know how it would fit into our current process according to CEQA. So we do have some concerns there, but I urge the board to consider, just knowing this different process and the new date, a whole nother year away from, can the board...
Can you be specific?
Yes, to consider making a presentation to the public to explain when the new date actually is and what that process is with the new alternative screening document. How will the public be involved? Will you take comments on the alternative screening document? Who the consultant is and how they'll be involved? Those types of questions would be really helpful. Thank you.
Okay.
Answers.
Perhaps Ram can address that in the general manager's report, but not now. Thank you.
I'd like to ask for the floor, Chair.
Scott.
I would like to reiterate my prior compromise proposal. I guess since it's not on the agenda, I can't make a motion today. I would ask that it be placed on the agenda for next time. I did sit at the WHO committee, and I do believe, and I would ask that it be on the agenda for next time so that I can make a motion to the rest of the board that we lock the gates open on the Scotts Flat spillway, lock them open, lock them closed when the terror level by the Homeland Security coding thing goes up to orange or higher, and to
Director
then
Miller,
lock
just
them
really quickly.
permanently. I have the floor. When we have a trail downstream established. So if we can put that on the agenda so I can make that as a motion next time, I would appreciate it, Nick.
Very good, thanks.
And I have something too. I certainly would have said the same thing, but you got there first, Scott. Might have said it in a different way.
Well, I'm a prick.
10 people have spoken here today. Some of those people called me and said, where do we go next? And this is the only avenue that people have. If we don't address, we spend a month waiting to address the need. Then the only avenue is to come here, and I called Greg Jones and told him, or he called me and I told him that this was going to happen. So since 10 people are here, plus a few others that haven't spoken, could you just give us some idea of when this ad hoc committee is going to be set up?
Did I get an answer to my request?
Am I allowed to talk?
Yeah, I'm not.
I was addressing that to the chair.
Yeah, I suspect you should address all this in general manager's comments. That's okay. We're kind of getting ahead of ourselves here.
Okay.
I made a
Excuse
request
me.
to the chair.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
To speak, and I'll let you speak.
These people took off work today to come here. Now you're going to make them wait another 45 minutes or 2 hours to get an answer. Just
okay.
When is the committee going to meet?
Nancy and I were the ones on the WHO, and we did sit and try to hear everybody.
Yeah, there's
This is our
probably a simple answer to this.
proposal that we came out of that committee with, actually, somewhere.
Yeah, we shouldn't debate this now. We can, at the pleasure of the president, we can move the GM's report to right now, if you like. And we can certainly have this matter agendized for the next board meeting, I would assume, which is December.
Well, that's a great suggestion. Why don't we take
Thank
general
you,
manager's
Dustin.
comments now?
All right.
You feel
Sure.
whiplashed, Rem?
Sure. Just a medicated haze. Good morning, board. It's my pleasure to update you. Absolutely, we can have the Scotts Flat Gate item put on the board agenda for December the 13th. I would recommend that we probably move quicker than that. I know that staff is meeting this afternoon to discuss the items brought forward as part of the WHO committee, and in that meeting we will discuss the ad hoc meeting or the working group meeting that is to be agendized. Is it agendized or is it not? Okay, but it will be agendized, and we'll do that in short order. I will make the commitment that it's done. Well, we can try to get it done before Thanksgiving, but clearly there is need. On other issues, the district currently has 186,053 acre feet. We have seen a market increase in Rollins. The public will have seen that. That is in part or in whole due to the fact that PG&E was evacuating its Spalding Reservoir as it's preparing for winter. So they kind of jumped ahead of us, which has precluded some work at our Orchard Springs facility. We are below normal in terms of our precipitation at Bowman. We're currently at 2.91 inches of rain, which is roughly 48% of average. Pleased to report that the Chicago Powerhouse, which was in repair, is now back in service. That is an outage that was difficult for the district, but we've made big steps to move that forward. The Willow Creek pipeline, which is down by Home Depot, that's back in service, and the Scotts Flat spillway repairs will be completed by Thanksgiving. We've had some weather delays there. That was we've been working on the spillway grouting the seams under direction of DSOD and FERC. I had the pleasure of addressing the Auburn Rotary last week, and then just a couple items. We are going to be reaching out to the community of Scotts Flat at Gate 1 and Gate 2 as we're preparing for some timber harvest work and some watershed management there. So we will do the outreach as well as conduct a job walk at both the facilities. On the grant front, our IPM, our Integrated Pest Management proposal to DPR, that's due on December 8th. We're second round for that. That's a $300,000 grant. We've also submitted S&C grant for English Meadow. That's a planning and THP grant for $85,000, and then CDFW grant for English Meadow. That's another $300,000. I'm also pleased to report to the board that correspondence between the district and the Nevada City Rancheria, as well as the Colfax Band, is moving along. We have reached out to them. Meetings are set. We're preparing the necessary documents to begin working with those groups as part of the EIR. So we are now working with the 3 tribal groups within our area, within the Centennial Project area. When will CEQA be released? CEQA is always a difficult thing to time, and many things compete with it in timing. Currently, staff believes that we'll be able to release the CEQA document in the fall of 2018. That's what we've told the protestants. The reasoning behind that is we have a number of projects that have come up before it, and we're working diligently on our alternatives analysis. So certainty is tough to report out to the public, but right now that's where we're headed. The alternatives, rolling the alternatives out before the draft EIR is probably going to probably not happen. That the attorneys would probably not say that was a good idea, but I'm happy to ask our team as we move forward. As far as the letter, and this speaks to many other issues. We have received a number of correspondence, not only the letter that you have today, which a swastika is a hate symbol, and you will actually go to jail if you spray paint it on a wall. The police department has been informed, and they are going to reach out to Mr. Wills. He is a district customer, and we will.
I didn't give his name before.
Sorry, I apologize. But the thing is that we've had things said inside the boardroom here over the last few months that have caused concern for district employees. We've had letters and phone calls and emails that all present various levels of threat or harassment to the district. And so the district is going to start, we have just started recording our phone calls so that we can address them and ensure the safety of staff as we move forward. We are also going to be moving certain initiatives here at the district to ensure that the district is safe and that these meetings are safe. So I don't know to say stay tuned. Management we're putting together our first-person shooter protocols now, and we'll have that in place. We're working on our front desk and how we let people in and out of the building and how we track people in and out of the building. We're also working with council so that we can sensitively reach out to the community when they have these issues and remind them of civil discourse, I guess is the best way to say that. But also, as these events happen, both the public speaking as well as some of the other issues, we will be reporting this not only to our local law enforcement, both the sheriff and the Garris Valley PD. So we're working to try to make sure that nobody gets hurt. And as the APC saw the other day, we will add a disclaimer to our board to our agenda, just letting everybody know that we really would appreciate civil discourse, and a discourse that isn't meant to threaten or terrorize or harass anyone, right? Whether it's among ourselves in the public or staff or the board. So anyway, we'll be reporting some of that stuff out, and the APC will see some of that as we move forward. That concludes my update.
Nick, as a component of that, the people that control the guns in our country didn't find anything the matter with the person's application who just shot up 26 people in the church.
He was a privileged person, and the Air Force didn't convey the records to Nick in that case. So that's a complicated situation. Okay. Michael, you have comments on the general manager's report?
Yeah, you need it.
Thank you. Please restrict your comments to the general manager's report.
Michael Hillwell, resident of Division 1, and I have a question concerning the gate at Scotts Flat. As I understand it, that gate was locked by staff without any board action. So I'm wondering why it can't be unlocked without board action in response to the request of dozens of people. This is dragging on into its second month, and it seems to me to be fairly simple.
Okay, thank
So I'd like to know why the staff can't proceed to address the issue.
Okay, the last one. This is getting out of hand.
What's your second one?
For the general manager's report, I'd like to address the delay in the EIR and the EIS. While we're waiting to see these environmental documents, what we've been hearing is, oh, well, there's not really a project. As we go forward buying land, as we go forward drilling, as we go forward setting a timeline, as we go forward building a dam. And up and over in Colfax, where I live, we've been seeing a lot of gravel trucks moving, and people are worried. People are going, are they just going ahead with this thing while they hold us in suspension behind an EIR and EIS that never seems to come out? You're not supposed to be doing these things before there's a decision. There needs to be an accounting. There needs to be an idea. If we have other alternatives, why is the dam planned to the last pebble and nothing else is getting invested in to the tune of $10 million?
That's enough. That's not a comment on the general manager's report.
It was about the delay in the EIR, which is in the general manager's report. Thank you.
Good morning. I believe public comment is still open.
No, it's not.
I didn't hear it closed.
We went from public comment to general manager's report.
We are on a separate agenda item.
Well, I know that. I just didn't hear public comment closed. So.
We went on to general manager's report.
Okay. Well, I have a question. This is not.
Is this related to the general manager's report?
I'll ask the question. Are you going to present at CWC on your CWC application? Is NID presenting on the 11 million? You are. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks. Okay. Let's move on. That completes the general manager's report. Thank you, Rem. Moving on to the consent agenda.
Motion to adopt the consent agenda.
I have a question.
Please
on
ask
number
it.
3.
Okay. Go for it.
Do you want me to do it?
Sure.
Simple.
Good.
I don't know where this is on the Nevada City Highway because the cross street.
Yeah, it
is
was
not-
a little hard to tell from the map.
And I did get out the magnifying glass in addition to my NID glasses. And it's still, there was no magic orientation.
Yeah,
So what's the
can
cross
staff
street?
explain approximately where it is?
Chip, you got it?
Yes, this is, good morning, board, staff, public. Chip Close, Water Operations Manager. This is the Meeks Lumber, formerly the Meeks Lumber location.
Okay.
That helps. Thank you.
Good. And so they're planning to develop that, and this is, it looked like from the map there's going to be a little cul-de-sac in there and a few parcels.
That's correct. Very minor water line extension to support multiple uses that are going to occur out there.
And this is 100% paid for by the developer.
Mhm.
Good, thanks.
So I'll second John's motion.
Okay.
I had a question on the warrants.
Okay. Go ahead.
Do I address it to Marvin or Dustin in this situation? Check number 82992 in the amount of $24,022. It says settlement. And the receivee, I guess, is Craig Soward. I was just curious the topic of the settlement. I don't remember the name.
We're under an NDA.
Yeah. That's a personnel matter, and we're actually subject to a non-disclosure agreement.
Okay. Craig Soward's an employee?
No, sir.
No. Okay.
But related to a personnel
I didn't recognize
matter.
it. It just looked like, that's why it was ill-defined in the package as well. Okay?
Great,
Peace.
thanks.
Peace and love.
Let's see, we have a motion?
Mm-hmm. We have a second.
And a second. Roll call, please.
Division 1?
Aye.
Division 2?
Aye.
Division 3?
Aye.
Division 4.
Aye.
Division 5.
Aye. Okay, moving on to general orders. Item number 4, donation to...
Oh, I'm sorry. I did want to compliment everybody on the utilization of the criteria for donation. That was one of my things that I'd instilled some years ago. Our prior general manager had significant difficulty in saying no, and so we gave it a construct of here's a way. So it looked a little creative, part of it this year, part of it next year. Getting a nod out of the general manager on this one, so apologize for the rigidity of it, but I thought it still reflected participation in what is meant to be a defined mechanism for monetary distributions. So thank you for working within those guidelines.
Great.
Thanks. Good morning, Board. Public staff. I'm Greg Jones, Assistant General Manager. I'd like to bring to you today a donation for the Nevada County Historical Society.
Oh, I'm sorry. That was this.
You jumped ahead.
My bad. I was jumping ahead again.
You can summarize your comments again.
What I said before is on number 4, not number 3.
You kind of said it all for me.
Yeah.
2017 Nevada County Historical Society had requested a donation in the amount of $7,000 to NID. By the time we received it, the district had already nearly obligated all of its 2017 donation funds of a total of $7,500 to other entities, nonprofit entities, organizations in the community. As you can see in your board packet, there's a listing of all those. At the time, in September, we were able to obligate a portion of the total ask, I believe $1,500, $1,485. And so the Historical Society has been a long opportunity for NID and its staff to utilize the historical maps, records, and opportunities within the Historical Society for its operational purposes. Our right-of-way agents, our encroachments, and our engineering and our staff are constantly utilizing the resources of the Historical Society on an operational and ongoing basis. They have asked us to help them with remodeling of their kitchen facilities in a new facility and building that they have recently acquired. And so this is what this funding would go towards. You have a breakdown of the budget in your board packet. It's kind of a range from $6,700 to about $7,100. The original ask was $7,500. Over the course of 2017, the Historical Society was able to garner support from volunteers and community members, so kind of walked it down throughout the year to $7,000. So what we're requesting, what staff is requesting today, is to obligate NID to its 2018 donation and contributions budget, which is a total of $7,500, obligate the remaining balance of $5,515 to be payable in 2018. And the reason why we're bringing it today is because the work and the contractors that they have lined up are ready to work. They do have a community volunteer who's ready to offer a bridge loan of this amount in order to finish the work. However, this would give that community member security that that bridge loan will be repaid as soon as the first of the year arrives with this donation. So that's why we're asking today to obligate the 2018 donation budgets in 2017 today. Questions?
And in follow-up with regards to reference to the prior general manager, whose nature was always positive and a very pure human being, the economy had gone in the tank, and people were requesting out of the woodwork. So that was the other reason this construct was developed. Poor guy was a nice guy all the time. I would move that we approve the donation request and obligate the 2018 donation as listed here in the packet and as recommended by the APC committee for the Nevada County Historical Society.
Second, but we have a public comment.
We also
have
a
direction.
And I have a question.
Yeah, do you want to do it now or after
I'm
public
ready.
comment?
If
You're ready?
Yep, I'm ready.
Go for it.
Okay, so we have an existing policy that says the district may fulfill requests for contributions to nonprofits/community organizations when the organization can show their direct relationship to watershed health, water quality, agriculture, or natural resources. And I was part of the board when Scott mentioned we put this in because the requests were in the hundreds from everybody in town for donations, and we had to establish some criteria, so we did. So if this were approved, it would be a contradiction of our existing policy because the Historical Society, while a very valued organization, does not fit the description of the type of community agency that our policy allows us to fund. And I have more to say. So we put $7,500 a year in donation money by this policy. And by the way, this was an excellent report. There's a lot of good detail in it and report from you folks as well. But if we commit another $5,515, we're going to leave next year's balance at $1,985 for all of the purposes that we'd outlined in the policy that exists. So much as this is a great cause, I don't think it fits our criteria. So I think we would have to change the policy, first of all, and I don't see that the agenda allows that. And then we'd have to consider it. But on the second count, I can't agree with this because we're committing money for next year that should be going to the organizations as defined in our policy. So that's all I have to say.
In the board packet, Nancy, I think on the third paragraph on the background, I think it underscores the benefit of having the Historical Society doing well because it provides a historical perspective on what the district has done, what is going on in the watershed, what's going on in our rivers and streams and lakes on a wide-ranging historical basis. So although I think your points are well taken, I think the Historical Society provides a very valuable service to our county.
And I think I might add to that, one of the contributions, well, one of the major contributions of the society is the collection of maps dating back all the way to the 1850s. As we look at right-of-ways, easements, outlines of canals and flow of the water throughout the watershed, I think there is a nexus there that I think doesn't specifically speak to, the policy doesn't specifically speak to an entity that collects documents and catalogs maps and opportunities, but I think the value that these maps provide the district and its ability to focus on resources, water quality, agriculture, and how we operate within these realms is really kind of the underpinning to a lot of the work that we do at the district. So that's my only...
I value the Historical Society very much. And unfortunately, I think once you start deviating from policy and make exceptions, then it gets very difficult to put a stop to it. So we open the door for all sorts of requests that we at one point felt we needed to throttle down a bit. We have to follow policy. We cannot deviate from what we've set unless we change the policy.
Okay.
Will has a comment.
Yeah, as usual, I see both sides to every story, both sides to every issue here. I agree with Nancy and I agree with John as well. I've been to the Historical Society and I see the benefits to it. My only compromise would be to see if we could allow for more money next year. And I think that would be a good compromise, because $7,500 is not a ton of money relative to the amount of money we have in a budget. And I think it leaves us a little bit shy into the next year. So I would just offer that as somewhat of a compromise, as to, you know, I see the value in looking at the old maps and the research that's done. And, as I said earlier, I did tour that, but we also have, other, areas in which we could contribute to the community. So, I mean, I'm just offering that as a compromise, that we could potentially look into just adding more money next year as well.
That's not really agendized. We can't do that today, can we?
No, I'm not. No, I'm just talking about.
Nancy?
Another possibility might be to just pay for the services that we get from the Historical Society. You probably run a free enterprise with a lot of volunteer help. That's my take. But is there another way to fund them other than this? My problem is that I'm going to be a stickler for what we have for policy. And so I'm in sympathy. I want to see them get money. I would wonder if you couldn't get those cabinets from maybe if it's B&C or Hills Flat, as you mentioned, at a discount. And a lot of people go to IKEA. I know that's out of the area, but apparently they do kitchens pretty inexpensively. So, you know, most of us, when we get ready to do a remodel, figure out the least expensive way to do it and figure that we've got to make ends meet. And so I would encourage you. That's harsh. I'm sorry, because I know that you've reached out to the community for a lot of things, but.
Well, I agree with what you're saying, Nancy, but I think we have already given them money and sort of opened the door into that.
Well, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But
But
you know, committing a crime doesn't mean we have to continue.
Yeah, I know. I'll end with that, but,
Director Weber, I'm not sure what after, beyond this, and we could speak with the society, I suspect, if there's any other ways we can go, but maybe public comment?
Right, there's public comment on this, so go ahead, Will.
yeah, I mean, could I ask if we are technically out of policy here, or are we technically in policy? I think that's kind of an issue here.
The only legal issue before you is the issue of gift of public funds. And anytime I see the words donation, you know, my eyebrows go up a little bit, because that is code for this is potentially a gift. Your staff has done a very good job in their memo of tying this to a district purpose. You know, if we were, let me try to give you an example, the shooting in Texas. If we wanted to donate district funds to the victims of that horrible event, that's a certainly worthy cause, but it doesn't tie back to a direct district function. And I would be concerned that that's a gift. In this particular instance, as I said, staff has done a good job of tying the funds that are proposed to be used to an actual benefit to the district. So I don't see any legal issues if you in fact choose to move forward.
So you're saying that we're within policy?
Yes.
That Nancy had addressed?
Yeah, every policy. See, I think of terms of whether it's appropriate as an irrigation district. And your policy attempts to reflect what is appropriate and what's inappropriate. So I think in terms of what's legal and what's not, rather than what your policy says or what the policy doesn't say. And what I can tell you is I think this is an appropriate use of district funds. It's not a gift.
Fair enough. Public comment?
Sid Brown. I just would like to say that I do support the district supporting this particular item. It is a stretch to make it exactly within the guidance of your policy document. However, I came here to also say that I would like the district to increase the level of annual contribution to nonprofits when they meet these criteria. The $7,500 seems to be a very small piece, especially when one considers some of the other expenditures that the district makes. I think this is a very important fund. I think it should be more robust. Certainly at least $10,000 seems reasonable.
15 perhaps, when it's within the budget. I'm very concerned that a decision made at this time to obligate future monies will diminish the opportunity and the previous commitments to other good watershed directly tied beneficial actions in partnerships with nonprofits. So I support this. I really strongly encourage the district to increase the level, and I appreciate your consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. Richard.
Thank you. Richard Thomas, raw water customer off the Red Hill Ditch, just above Nevada City. Interesting item. I saw it as I was reviewing your agenda earlier at home, and I didn't realize that I had an opinion on it till just now. I find myself agreeing with John and Will and Nancy to an extent, and Dustin, of course. I think there's not a real stretch to consider the value that the Historical Society provides to the district and can be encompassed in your definition of direct relationship to watershed health, water quality, agriculture, and natural resources. My specific concern comes that it was just mentioned that you're committing next year's funds this year. I don't know what the historical nature of that commitment is, but it would seem that that might be unusual, and perhaps that's why I came to the board. My second concern is that you're considering contributing a major portion of the amount that you do donate to this one specific situation, or one specific organization, and one specific project that they have, which is their kitchen remodel. So I think that I find that excessive. When I look at your donations for 2017, you've got small donations to the following groups: Climate Change Coalition, Scholarship Fund, SEED, the Farm Bureau of Nevada County and Placer County, the FFA Ag Boosters Annual Dinner, Lincoln Creek Fest and Cleanup, the NCRCD Ag Classroom, Wildlife Heritage Foundation, and of course the Circle River Cleanup, and their direct benefits to the watershed. They were the biggest contribution at $2,000. The rest were all $5,000. So I'm wondering if these other 500. Thank you, John. 500. So I'm wondering if these other organizations might not have a continuing need for these sort of donations for their ongoing projects, if that's not a major portion of some of their funding, and that to commit this major portion of next year's funding might be excessive and premature. Thank you.
Greetings, Board. I'm Daniel Ketchum. I'm the president of the Nevada County Historical Society. We are, in fact, one of the oldest registered nonprofits in the county. I think if our title included the word environmental, Nevada County Historical Environmental Society, we probably wouldn't be having this debate today. I do want to clarify that our services in that library, which is a premier historic research library, we have visitors from all over the world to come do research in our library there. It supports almost on a daily basis environmental research. When there are EIRs being done in this county, they're visiting our library. Caltrans is a frequent consumer of our services there, as NID is also. All these services are provided for free. All we charge for is copies and photographs periodically. But we support this service, this operation out of our pocket. We are a 100% volunteer-driven organization, and in fact, the donation we're asking for is to complete a kitchen remodel that supports our volunteers in a workroom, kitchen area. It's also a conference room. This conference room is available to other organizations as well. So I would invite your consideration the fact that although our name is not environmental in any fashion or form, we do directly support environmental research here in this county that's critical to many, many operations besides NID. Thank you for your time and your consideration in this matter.
Thank you, Daniel.
Bob Brandstrom from Grass Valley. I won't address the merits of this particular proposal. That's up to the board to decide. My concern is setting a precedent for pre-spending money from next year for this year. There may be other organizations in the community that also provide services to the watershed area that may be in the process of developing a proposal to come to the board next year. And I think it's setting a bad precedent for them to be able, if you pass this, for them to come to the board and say, whoops, we already spent 3/4 of the money last year in a pre-commitment to another organization. I think really this should wait until next year and give other organizations an opportunity to present whatever proposals they might have.
Can I ask a question? Sure. Well? Yeah. What is the rationale with the pre-commitment, so I can get that out of my logic, my head? What's the reason why we're doing it now instead of doing it?
In 2018?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's because of the fact that they're lined up to do all the contract work and set the kitchen remodel now. They've already reached out to the local building supplies. They've got quotes. They've got contractors that have been in line, and so it was a matter of setting the work done now for a future commitment later instead of waiting. That was the purpose of bringing it today.
That's question A. Question B is
the Circle Bridge. So, Board, the Historical Society was actually ahead of Circle's river cleanup. And so when Circle came and asked, that upset the cart in terms of whose request was where. Now, you wouldn't have been able to complete the full request for the Historical Society, but the meeting with APC graciously supported the river cleanup, and that bobbled the ball in terms of the Historical Society, which, delaying it is up to the board, and, as long as work hasn't started, there's nobody out. But those are the steps that got us here. This is unusual in my brief tenure here at the district. We've never been presented with anything like this. So we're just trying to figure out how to get through it.
Yeah. I want to make one comment. I think
Sure.
that was coming. I don't believe that on an annual basis, I think there was a mention of previous commitments. I don't believe there is a ongoing commitment on an annual basis for any given organization throughout the community.
Right. I believe there's one last public comment on this.
I
shouldn't have said it that way. That activated the springs and Ricky and John.
I think cutting out the public would be a bad choice for the board. Diana Suarez, Colfax, California. I wasn't going to say anything because I'm over there across the river, but I became concerned because I'm wondering, does the board follow its policies or does it not follow its policies? And that's what I've been wondering a lot, because I've heard the board set a policy of not selling water outside the district, which is a policy I'm wondering if they'll follow. And now there's this criteria for donations, and I don't know if they're going to follow that or not. And I'm not even sure if they're clear on what the policy is. Now, that's what I was sitting over there thinking. But it has come to my attention that there's some stuff going on here that needs to be disclosed, and the head of the Historical Society is also the appraiser for the homes that are going to be inundated by Centennial Dam, so has a prior relationship with the NID board. I think that's something that the citizens need to be aware of, and this fudginess on the policies is something the citizens need to be concerned about. Thank you.
John Bowles. I just was going to tag on to that. I thought it should have been disclosed that Mr. Ketchum is the primary appraiser on the Centennial project and has been paid thousands of dollars so far on that, number one. And number two, Mr. Jones's comment about nothing's ongoing. Well, I do think you've supported Circle for the last 15 years on their cleanup, so I think that's been a pretty commonality of year after year of spending funds to support the cleanup. So, thank you.
Good morning, Ricky Heck, Grass Valley. I'm kind of like a process person, and what I'm seeing here is maybe a lack of process, and it might be really interesting, probably not at this meeting, but at a future meeting, to put out, much like the Seroptimists or League of Women Voters do, like, hey, we're going to spend X in 2018. All of you folks who have watershed-related projects that might be of a benefit to the district, please submit your proposals so that the board can evaluate them one against the other, rather than just piecemealing, and saying, oh, well, we spent, $5,000 on a kitchen remodel, so we can't do river cleanup. It's like, that doesn't, it seems like there's a better process, you guys. And, you know, just like scholarships or anything else, people apply and then you weigh the benefits of those things rather than just piecemealing it along. So I would ask that somebody think about a process for this.
We have a motion and a second.
We have a motion and a second. Are there any further comments? You good to go?
If there's any other questions?
I would just comment that the issue of raising the donation threshold is that Will brought up is a valid question, but that's not the issue before us today. The issue before us today is whether or not to make this donation to the Historical Society. We have a motion and a second. So, roll call, please.
Division 1,
No?
Division 2,
Aye.
Division 3,
Aye.
Division 4,
No.
Division 5.
Aye. Good,
Thank you, Board.
thanks. Moving on. Item number 5, Rollins low-level outlet valve. It says this is a 60-inch cone valve. Is that the same as a Howell-Bunger valve?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Board, public, and staff, I'd like to discuss item number 5, which is a Rollins low-level outlet valve, FATR number 2076. The intent of this item is to approve a purchase order with VAG USA Limited Liability Corporation in the amount of $469,368.34 for the providing of a 60-inch fixed cone valve and support structure, and authorize the general manager to sign the appropriate documents. Basic thing is this is for Rollins Reservoir. This is the discharge structure. The existing one is aged and needs to be replaced. It has had some damage over the years. In addition, this is regulatory required because of some of the damage it's been exposed to over the years. The intent would be is we bid this project. We bid it to 3 quotes we received. VAG was the lowest for the Rollins facilities. In addition, this is currently budgeted in the 2017 Hydro Reservoir Dam Water Improvement Count 50112-529212076, and is recommendation of staff to approve the purchase of the reference valve from VAG USA Limited Liability Corporation.
Any board comment? Nancy?
Does this include installation as well?
That's a very good question. The answer is there's 3 components as part of this. This is one of the components. It's just purchase the valve. There's the second component. There'll be a generator needed to support this, which is a small generator, and then the installation of it. The installation requires this to be drug up approximately 200 feet in a tunnel and reinstalled. One of the major components of this valve is a support structure to support this valve. This valve weighs 65,000 pounds. It's about as tall as me, and it's about 9 feet long. So it's a big piece of equipment. Yes, sir.
Does it include installation?
No, it does not.
I didn't hear your question, Ren.
It does not
Your question was, does it include installation?
It does not include installation.
But installation would be undertaken primarily by our hydro staff?
No, it would be contracted out.
Okay.
This is a very specialized job.
Okay. And all the flanges and so on that are in place are appropriate to take this valve?
Our plan is we are reusing the existing flange inside that's in the dam, and this will have all the flange that will match that flange.
Okay. And there was some mention in the staff report about a shroud structure that would allow this to not interfere with potential construction of a second power plant there. Could you kind of educate us on that?
On the books and under planning right now is Rollins 2 powerhouse facility, which would extend this pipe outside the tunnel and have the powerhouse. This would unit would be has been set up such that it could be relocated and be downstream of that future unit or parallel with that unit.
Got it. Thanks. That's helpful. Any other board questions?
Yeah.
Nancy?
Okay.
Oh,
Go ahead. I had a crack. You go ahead. I'll be next.
Could you briefly explain what this valve does?
I've been working
So
on.
the audience knows why it costs so much.
Okay, I will work on it, and I'll try to make it as, it basically,
There's also a picture of a small one right on that wall
Yeah.
that Rem showed me on the others, not there, it's on the other wall.
I would like everybody, to answer this question, I'd like everybody.
Into the hall.
I would like everybody to consider this. Have you ever been in your house when you closed the valve and heard the pipes rattle? Okay, everybody's done that. That doesn't work as well with the big dam, because there's a lot of moving water. What this valve does is allow the water to be slowly released and allow that pressure surge not to be large. That is a way I wish to explain it is everybody's had when they opened the valve, closed it real quick on the piping house, it rattled. This valve the dam does not like having surges, so this allows that water to slowly be released and close the valve such it can take the surge off the dam. That's what this valve does, in a very simple. Will, I hope that directed more back to answer your question.
So what's the whole package? You do the three components, this is one. When, what are the other two parts, and when will this be implemented, begun and ended?
That's a very good question. This unit will take about 42 weeks to build. It will be built in Germany and shipped back over here. That time delay, having a contractor on site waiting would be, the cost would be higher because they wouldn't have the right prevailing wage at the time of install. As we get the unit on site, if we get the valve on site to explain this, then we're going to hire a contractor to install it, bid out and hire a contractor. And the generator is a very small component of all this, and the generator, we'll do that as a third contract on this. Currently budgeted for this year is just the valve, because we knew that since when we did Bowman a couple of years ago, we purchased the valve 1 year ahead of schedule, and then we installed it in the following year.
So what's the timeline on it, Gary?
We're looking at installation in the fall of 2018.
And the generator will have to be hooked up at the same time, I
Yes, ma'am.
presume? Okay. And what is the budget for it?
The budget this year is $500,000. It's part of the packet, the whole package. I'm trying to remember exactly how much was in there, but there's adequate for this purchase this year.
But what is the budget for next year?
Budget for next year, I think we have $1.2 million in that program, because there's other projects inside this.
There is sufficient funds in next year's budget to install this valve.
Folks, when we get a report, I'm sorry, I'm crabby this morning.
Maybe you could
I apologize for
repeat
that.
that into the microphone, Gary.
But
What Kean said.
if you could give us all of this information rather than me acting like the district attorney probing for answers, it would help a lot.
I think a component of that, Nancy, is we don't know what the contractor is going to charge to install the valve because there are no bids associated with that.
But my question is, do we have the money there? And what I hear is we have 1.2 million, but there are other projects involved in that. So that's not an answer to my question. It is a sort of an answer, but it doesn't really get to the fact of.
Okay. There is, in the 2018 budget, there are funds available for purchase of a generator and contract of the installation. That is in the current budget. That number, as far as the budget in 2018, I do not have with me at this time. I can pull up the 2018 budget and tell you what was in that program budget.
So you put me in the position of having to make a decision without enough information, or just being a good guy and going along with it.
The only thing we're buying is the valve.
Correct.
I realize, but the valve in itself is not very useful until it's installed.
So, okay.
Motion to approve the purchase order with VAG USA Limited Liability Company in the amount of $469,368.34 for the furnishing of a 60-inch fixed cone valve and support structure, and authorize the general manager to sign all appropriate documents.
Roll call, please.
Division 1,
I don't feel nice so I'll say no.
Division 2,
Aye.
Division 3,
Aye.
Division 4,
Aye.
Division 5.
Aye. Okay.
Has to be
Thank you.
done right here.
Oh,
One of the
thank
things
you.
that has to be done.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Brooke has very little sense of humor, neither does DSD.
We're moving on to item 6, which is an informational presentation to review and discuss the district's drought contingency plan.
Okay, good morning, board, staff, and public. Chip Close, Water Operations Manager, as I talk slowly, waiting for the projector to fire up. So, per board request, staff has brought forth the drought contingency plan for discussion and review. This is a very important plan, as a reliable water supply is essential to a healthy and vibrant community. Its importance highlights the need to prepare for a drought or other water supply shortages. Contingency planning before a shortage allows selection of appropriate responses consistent with varying severity of shortages. While the actions taken should be adequate to deal with the circumstances and no more, it is essential that water demand reduction programs start prior to a severe shortage. The drought contingency plan enables the district in providing water for public health and safety and minimizing impacts on the economic activity, environmental resources, and the region's lifestyle. The plan you see before you, I put it on the wall so we could walk through it, but basically it is a document that's required by the Department of Water Resources, the State Water Resources Control Board, and is also included in the California Water Code. The document itself needs to be reviewed every 5 years, and we recently reviewed it and updated it in November of 2015, partly because it was due, partly because of the drought we were in. The modifications done in 2015 actually separated portions of this drought contingency plan per customer. In the past, we used to conglomerate treated water, ag water, all threw them all in the same category. We now separate those because, as we learned in the most recent drought, the state requested that we treat each category of customer differently. So we have modified the plan to allow us to do that. So what I'd like to do is just briefly walk through how the plan works, what we do, and walk through the stages. First of all, what I should start off saying is that every year the district analyzes how much water and carryover storage we have in our coffers. I'm going to jump ahead a little bit here. We have made the determination that 78,000 acre-feet of water is our minimum carryover storage target. And the pie chart up on the wall shows you where that 78,000 acre-feet comes from. It is a minimum supply that we utilize for domestic, for our core agricultural customers, and then a portion of it is unusable storage, either dead pool or is going for in-stream flow releases. So that's how we determined the base. We then take that number, and then before April 1st of every year, we take a calculation of how much snowpack we off, how much anticipated runoff there is, to come up with a forecasted available supply. And that is the determination and basis of, are we in a drought, are we expecting a drought, and do we need to implement our drought contingency plan? The chart you see on the wall is basically an overview of the plan and all the stages it has, but the column on the left, forecasted available supply April 1st, shows you the target at which we either implement a stage or don't, based on the amount of available storage on April 1st. Okay, and then the columns to the right tell you what each stage entails. So as we move on, and I apologize, I'm jumping a little bit, So stage one is strictly a voluntary reduction, and this is where we fire up the PR machine, ask folks to reduce and conserve as much as possible. For our ag water customers, we actually declare no new or increased surplus water availability, which basically means that folks that are outside our district boundary or those exclusionary islands that are not covered under a legal contract will not be able to receive water in those time periods when we're at a stage one. Again, we increase public outreach. We target 75% of our historical end of month and October storage, limit district flushing. We increase our leak repairs and basically fire up the machine. Stage two jumps from a voluntary action to a mandatory action. This is an important jump, and the stage two is a 10 to 25% mandatory reduction. This chart here details how we go about imposing the reductions and gives us that roadmap. And basically, we're requiring a 10 to 25% reduction of all customers, but each box shows you the requirements for treated versus ag. The other important item on the ag reduction action is that we now limit new raw water sales and increases to a half a miner's inch, and we also declare no surplus water available to outside customers. The reason that's important is we cannot restrict internal district customers without declaring no surplus availability. In other words, we can't be providing water to folks who are not in the district while restricting our own internal district customers. So I know that's been a question in the past. I just wanted to cover that briefly and highlight that. We have a whole number, roughly 150 customers that are exclusionary or outside district. Of those 150, quite a few of them are covered under a contract, whether it be a railroad commission order or other water service agreement. City of Grass Valley, Nevada City fall into that category, and their contract actually states that it is subject to surplus water. So it is a challenging thing for us to implement the drought contingency plan and deal with them as a surplus customer. Public health and safety then starts to come into the equation as well, and so we have to have those discussions with the cities.
I was going to ask with regards to the contractual that indeed City of Grass Valley and City of Nevada City technically are exclusionary areas.
That's correct. And
Not technically, they are.
They are.
No.
Yeah. Yeah.
Technical use for emphasis, not dichotomy.
Got it.
Yeah, I think it's
Drew.
important to emphasize that point because...
For emphasis.
That's okay. Because there is often comment from the public about the district selling water outside of the district and big concerns about that. Well, if we were to stop that, the city of Nevada City and the city of Grass Valley wouldn't have any water because they get their water from Nevada Irrigation District, and they are outside the district.
But not all areas within those two. I mean, Nevada City has a water supply from Little Deer Creek, and it draws from that first, and then when they don't have water, they come to NID for the contract. And only parts of Grass Valley are in the NID area, but we do sell water to the city of Grass Valley. So those are two separate items within the Grass Valley realm.
Yes, you're correct.
Probably why they haven't annexed, though we've offered to allow them. They have their own decisions to make.
No matter how you look at the city of Nevada City's water supply from Little Deer Creek, which is going to be used less and less as years go by because it is becoming so questionable. It doesn't change the fact that the district sells water to Grass Valley and Nevada City who are outside the district. Doesn't change anything.
Fair enough.
So I have a question on stage 2, the third bullet, large landscapes with treated water accounts shall reduce their usage by the target reduction percentage, 10 to 25%. How would you enforce that?
Well, obviously, we don't lay down a heavy hammer on the first go-around, but we are not a policing authority. However, when a drought goes into play, we have some tools available for fining, and it's already included in our rules and regulations, but basically, folks who waste water get a warning. If they don't meet the target regulation, the warning's followed up with an initial fine. If they still don't do it, the fine is increased. The initial first fine is $250, the next fine is $500, and it is our hope at that point in time that they will come into line. Now, the state is also working on penalizing utilities and agencies for water waste, and they're expecting agencies like the district to pass those penalties and fines on to district customers, and some of those are very substantial, up to $10,000. I hope we don't get there, and I hope our initial actions and discussions with them and finding ways to help them conserve, sending our water efficiency technician out there, helps get us to that 10 to 25%, but that's the process we will follow.
Chip, would you please let us talk about the Badger meters and how now we can see the usage, we can tag the usage, so we can come up with water budgets for specific meters.
Okay.
Yeah, the district is actively replacing out our old meters. They were radio read. We are now going to cellular. These meters are fabulous. They will give you a minute-by-minute water usage, and the technology is very amazing. It will automatically flag those accounts that are over an allotment for us. And in fact, we're already using the technology now for those accounts that have a huge jump in water usage month to month, and we send the water efficiency technician out to these folks to have a discussion. But it's that new technology that's going to allow us to really keep a close eye on these accounts. Director Wilcox.
Yeah, during the last drought, it was a very long drought, but it was not as deep a drought as some. So 76, 77 drought was actually much deeper in terms of the water supply. What drought contingency stage did we reach in the last drought?
Internally or externally?
Well, no. What did we declare? Stage 2, stage 3?
Again, we revamped the drought contingency plan more to mirror what the state demanded we implement.
Right.
Now, internally, would we have declared a stage 3 like we did?
Mm-hmm.
Probably not. Probably would have been the stage 2 realm. But the state required that we implemented stage 3 of our drought contingency plan, which brings me to one more topic. The state is continuing to work on long-term conservation goals as part of the emergency order that came out. One of those items that is still being bantered about is that they will change drought contingency plans, and they will all be standardized from here on out, and they will have 5 mandatory steps. And so the state is actively reaching into each individual drought contingency plan and trying to do a one-size-fits-all. So
one of the problems with year after year droughts is that your end of year carryover storage keeps getting eroded. And you know, I was involved in all these discussions. We are very concerned about our end of year carryover storage. What actions did we take to try and mitigate that?
Well, we are fortunate enough to have PG&E as a neighbor and a long-term coordinated operating agreement with them that allows us to purchase any surplus water they may have. And we were very proactive in that regard and purchased the maximum allotment that was available to us. And we purchased water all 3 years. The total allotment escapes me. It's somewhere in the 20,000 acre-feet range. And it was rather expensive, but we ponied up, and it greatly helped with the carryover from year to year. Had we not done that, we may have hit a higher stage of drought through this plan. Now, I mentioned earlier that we did hit stage 3. I should clarify that stage 3 was only implemented for the treated water customers. That was because of the state's demand that we implement at that stage. The ag water customers got to a stage 2, so.
Seems to me that we were fortunate that PG&E had that water available at a price that we could afford. As I recall, I think the price was around $40 an acre foot. Does that sound about right?
$40 an acre foot is what it was, the grand total. That's where I was saying it escapes me off the top of my head. It was somewhere in the neighborhood of...
I think it was around that figure. Many other agencies in the state were having to purchase water on the open market, which, as I recall, the prices were maybe up to $7,000 an acre foot. Does that sound?
Yes.
I think the transfer market at that time was more like $700 an acre foot. This is for water going north to south.
But there were some agencies
But
that were paying considerably more.
Indio paid $6,200.
Yeah, there was,
Okay.
I was just gonna say, there was a spot market. So the $700 water was water that has to be delivered from Northern California to Southern California.
Okay.
There was a spot market that developed in areas. Kern County was another example where you saw very high prices, but that was wet water that, you know, your neighbor may have had that was immediately available to you.
Okay, then my final question is, we're very fortunate to have this contract with PG&E, but they have to, on an annual basis, make a finding of availability and surplus water as well, I assume. We have no guarantee that that water is going to be there in the future, do we?
We do not. And in fact, the contract says we could purchase up to 54,000 acre feet. But as we witnessed during the drought, that full allotment was not made available to us because they didn't have it. Basically, they gave us what they could, which was right around that 20,000 acre feet is what we used.
Okay,
When
so
and PCWA is competing in that same block of water.
Okay, and that was my next question. So, what's the relative priority to potential sales to us versus PCWA? Who gets water first?
Well, contractually, we have our own contracts, okay?
It's up to PG&E.
It's up to PG&E at that point in time, and basically they divvy it out per the contract. I don't know the details of PCWA's contract well enough to tell you that they get precedent over one versus the other. What I can tell you is that we are basically jockeying for the same allotment of water.
So in other words, what you're saying is that in multiple critical dry years, we are potentially facing a significant shortfall.
Correct. As is determined in multiple planning documents.
Okay, very good. Those are my questions.
I'm sorry, this is a really good presentation, and we're kind of putting holes in it by asking questions early, but while we're on...
Well, Chip is a good sport, though.
Yeah. While we're on stage 2, I want to go back to the large landscapes, because one of the things we're accused of by the anti-dam people, Mr. Wallen in particular, is that McMansions use a lot of water and that we allow it to happen. And I worked on the rates committee with Scott at one point, and we looked at this, we looked at golf courses, and tried to figure out if we could charge a different rate. And we were told that we had to be equitable, that we couldn't discriminate within a class. Is that a change that we can now identify large landscapes with treated water and treat them differently?
Not without a Prop 218 process to reestablish a rate. Basically, we were bound by state law that we can't charge different rates for different customers. We are looking forward to renewing our rates in the coming year. So we will be working on how drought contingency plan pricing and purchase of external water fall into those categories, and hopefully we can expand that discussion in the future.
Director Weber, if I may...
Go ahead.
If I may elaborate, I think you're blending two different concepts. One is Proposition 218, which you're absolutely right. You cannot charge more than the cost of service to the customer. So you're bound by the Constitution with that, in that respect. What we're talking about here, though, is how you survive a drought, a limited supply. And the Water Code, you're not bound by the same Proposition 218 structure. You've got much more flexibility in how you can allocate the burden, so to speak, of limited water supply. You don't have to In fact, there's a specific provision in the water code that kind of allows you to, pick off those higher users, so to speak. That is, they may have to suffer a 20% reduction, whereas a standard 5/8 inch residential meter may only have a 10% reduction. So two different legal structures that allow you to operate.
Thank you. So I do have one more, I'm sorry, but
Go
I
ahead.
do. The fourth bullet under treated water and municipal water, corresponding with fall daylight savings time change, customers shall limit outdoor watering to 1 day a week. Actually, the beginning of the raining season is when I limit my water. I just turn it off. So the variances with daylight saving as determined by our federal government is maybe not the greatest hallmark for us to make a decision, but maybe the rainy season.
Also very varied in its nature, correct?
I know. I don't know what to do with that, Jim.
But I appreciate that, and we'll, as we update this plan, we'll look for maybe an alternate trigger that pops up in people's minds that, hey, I need to turn off my timers.
Last year, October was good. This year, October wasn't.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah. Director Wilcox.
Thank you. I'm done.
Did you have a question?
No, well, yeah, somewhat of a question. During the last drought, stage 2, what, there was the conservation measures taken, both voluntary, I think it was mostly voluntary, for the raw water system, correct? Also, weren't the tail waters checked pretty regularly to ensure that there was no water going out of the district?
Yes.
Were those monitored by the ditch tenders pretty significantly?
That's correct, and some of the biggest savings we achieved on the irrigation water side of the world was just from reoperation of our system, looking at ways we could cut back flows in canals, limit the amount of tailwater leaving the district, and turning off flows when storms hit. And we were able to conserve over 20,000 acre feet doing that alone.
So there was conservation measures by the district?
Yes, and now some of those measures have become permanent practice, which is great.
There's also one more issue with that. During that period of time, there are environmental dependencies for these tailwaters. In other words, and I think Director Miller had mentioned that there was a lot of complaints about different creeks that suddenly dried. And, I'm in an area when that can occur. And so, when we do have these conservation measures, we also somehow affect the environment as well. And so, and there's also individuals who are on standby water, farmers, individuals who aren't, they are in the district, but they don't have a water box, but they can buy surplus water, correct?
Intermittent accounts. So basically, they can purchase water if it's available in the creek.
So that availability was lessened.
That's correct.
As well.
That's correct.
So this is sort of a double-edged sword, I guess.
For every action, there is an opposite and equal reaction, correct?
Right.
So we did witness that. So although we battened down the hatches and tried to save every drop, there were some effects in the local creeks and streams. Wolf Creek being one of them, we saw went from a creek that flowed every year, at least according to the locals, but during the drought dried up.
South Wolf Creek.
South Wolf Creek. Thank you for the clarification.
Yeah, actually, I'd like to.
And it didn't dry up this year.
I just wanted to bring that
That's
all
good.
out.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
That's a good point.
Yeah, I'd like to loop back. Okay, so during the drought, we were able to examine very closely our operations, and you mentioned that we potentially conserve 20,000 acre feet. That's a great thing. And that we have established, basically operational practices which conserve that water over the long term. So that's an element of conservation that has already taken place and is not available as conservation in the future. So that all gets calculated into the base condition.
Correct. Moving here forward, that is the new base.
So when we're told you must conserve water, we have conserved some water, that water has been conserved, and so conservation is often basically a one-time gain. It's not available in the future. Ram?
It's true. There is demand hardening or conservation hardening. That's a known practice. We know that in cases where the organization, the utility, is actually conducting its own efficiencies, that is often the case. But we know that when we ask homeowners to become more efficient, that usually has a lifespan of about 3 years. And they'll bounce back before they bounce back to the practice. And I think some of that has to do with age of toilets and shower heads and practice. So while some of that demand hardening, as it were, is fixed, others are not so. I know that this is the hardening. A good example of that is a hotel. We can go in and replace all the toilets in the hotel, and that's a very real block of water, because we can kind of control that a little bit more than just asking for residential conservation. But to Director Weber's point, with these large landscapes and now with our new meters, we can water budget those folks as opposed to trying to incentivize with dollars. We can incentivize, I guess, through control, through direct control. And that's a very new place for us, and I commend staff for moving forward with the AMI system, because I was in this room 2 months ago when we were just daylighting some of the abilities of it, and they're significant. I mean, when people are calling in and they're saying, hey, I've got, my bill is out of control, what's going on, we can go on and say, well, your irrigation system, or something's happening at 1 o'clock in the morning, your system's turning on and you're delivering untold quantities of water. And
that's great.
It is fantastic, yeah.
Let's just say in the future we are faced with a really serious long-term shortage. Basically, there are different ways of dealing with situations like that. You can either increase supply or you can reduce demand. Our options aren't that great. One of the ways of reducing demand is to shed classes of customers. Is there how shall I say, a pecking order in which you shed classes of customers, and is this order under our control, or is it mandated by state law?
Well, great question, great point. I feel like you're helping me through the presentation here. I appreciate it.
Seize the moment.
This is a teachable moment.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it.
I'm an old teacher, and you had to seize on those teachable moments.
So
that's a good question.
For eating or horses, and that's where this is.
So I appreciate you bringing that up. Anytime we go into a mandatory stage of the drought contingency plan, we fire up the hardship committee. The hardship committee is a representative from each of the divisions, comes to the WHO committee, and we review hardship cases. Hardship cases are reviewed based on the use of water. The use of water does have a pecking list or a priority. And it is listed here on the Drought Hardship Committee and Variances page. It is also listed in the California Water Code, and that's where we derived from this list. But basically, the number one priority for water use in a shortage scenario is for human consumption, basically health and safety. Okay. Number 2 is livestock and animals. Number 3 is perennial crops, and number 4 is annual crops. So those are the priorities for which water use will be determined. And
even so it establishes a pecking order, and
California Water Code.
And actually, the lowest on that pecking order are the out-of-district raw water sales.
Well, the out-of-district sales will be turned off before mandatory reductions for internal customers go into effect. So they are not even on that list; they are off immediately.
And that's established
with the
by
first
law. Yes, Justin?
Yes, and the trigger is surplus, your process to declare surplus. But the legal mandate is, as Chip already mentioned, you cannot declare surplus and start serving water to outside your jurisdictional boundaries at the same time you're asking your in-district customers to reduce their water usage.
Got it. Thanks.
I just want to mention that, in the pecking order, when the state imposed, or I guess strongly suggested, restrictions during the drought, Governor Brown gave permission to public parks, school grounds, and I don't know, I guess not Caltrans. Caltrans was limited to the irrigation along the side of the roads, but in other words, the school grounds and parks had no restrictions at all. And I walked my dog day after day on a boggy ball field all the time that I'm doing everything I can to save water. Some of these inequities we maybe can't change, but maybe some we can.
Is that the city in Nevada City ball field?
No, it's school districts.
School district.
What I
But it
will,
wouldn't have made any difference, John, because any city.
Same
Yeah,
water.
yeah.
what I will say is that we learned through the recent drought that the governor can do quite a bit with an
Pretty much what he
emergency
wants.
order.
Yeah.
And he can change the pecking order based on that. Although it went for review through the Office of Law, OAL, it didn't seem to
It was an
have any
emergency.
effect. He just marched right on.
And it was, I guess.
The other night at the Lake Wildwood Forum, I was soundly, or NID was soundly, not me personally, NID was soundly bashed for not offering rebate programs, et cetera, which would change indoor plumbing in urban areas, and that NID does not participate in such rebate programs. Now, I'll just tell you my understanding of this, and you can tell me whether I'm right or wrong. You know, that kind of conservation in NID does not actually expand the water supply in any regard. So if you conserve your urban water, what does it actually do? It actually reduces the amount of wastewater which goes into the stream. We reutilize 100% of the wastewater that goes in stream. We serve it to agricultural customers. And so if you conserved urban water, all you're really doing is placing a greater demand on your reservoirs upstream, because that demand won't be met by wastewater. Would you agree with that statement?
Yes. Yes, so all of the local wastewater facilities return the flows back to the creek where we redivert down below. So we are
100%.
reutilizing. We are reutilizing those waters. We are recycling.
So therefore, that kind of urban conservation does not help the water balance.
In our district.
In our district. And now, certainly, there are areas where that could become extremely significant.
Critical.
Particularly urban areas that discharge to a salt sink. I mean, that's, you know, going back to my water wonky days, I mean, that was the critical criteria, that generally return flows stay in the system and are reutilized as many times as possible. And as a district, we certainly adhere to that philosophy, and we'll sell the water as many times as we possibly can get away with.
Okay. One last thing while I'm on this page. The Drought Hardship Committee, as I mentioned, meets and goes over hardship cases. There is precedent for our larger commercial ag customers who are Schedule F. They get precedence and review at the WHO committee. So I thought I would throw that in there, that there's also a order of hierarchy amongst the ag customers as well. So.
Okay.
In Schedule F, they have to have made $3,000 gross and actually have a true enterprise filing tax. That's what the F refers to as the federal tax.
That's correct. And
it's not us making that decision, but they have.
Also shows that they have a capital investment of $15,000 into their farm.
There's criteria there, yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
Who qualifies for that?
Well, let me apologize for all the interruptions, Jim.
No,
Sorry.
I appreciate it.
So are you done otherwise?
Go ahead.
Want to go to your pie chart, please? And I mused about this for a while. And I started my muse working with the unusable storage, the minimal pool. And this includes our obliged environmental contributions to the world, championed by the Foothill Network or whomever, state mandated. And we're 60-40 on this particular slide, which is our minimum carryover, but that's, as we're talking about drought.
60/40, I don't understand.
If you look at the pie chart.
The combined ag and domestic.
Versus usable, so
okay.
I was
Unusable.
prefacing this discussion. Yeah, I'm sorry, I was musing
Fine.
looking about the unusable, so, you know, in the range of 50/50, but indeed, 60/40.
Got it, I agree.
So then we keep getting beat up on the Centennial for exactly the reason I think Centennial's in the right spot. And that's because of the existing development on that river course. And so what I was going to ask or anticipate an answer of, and it has to do, if I can paraphrase old John Drew's delta, which is the change in the unusable storage versus or with the incremental increase in overall storage, were we to do the reservoir, my suspicion is, because we've developed that water course, there would be minimal, it's not going to be the same proportion. It would drive this, what we're demanded to have, required to have, which goes into the unusable, environmental further obligations, etc., wouldn't be in this proportion. But more, probably because we're already there and we already got this, you know, we're doing these things, that we could probably achieve an 80-20 or something, that it might be minimal increase in the unusable. Dead pool is going to increase, so there will be an increase. You know, all these things have these dead pools, but this other category of current and future environmental requirements would. You see where I'm getting at?
Yes, I'm following along, but I would like to highlight the fact that the unusable storage number is going to increase substantially when the FERC license comes into play. This does not include.
Independent of the.
Due to in-stream flows.
Correct.
Oh, even without Centennial?
Correct.
Ooh, so this will drive it further towards 40/60 or something?
Yes.
Okay, this was, I was kind of by myself thinking about it and thinking some of the, okay. So then, again though, creating another reservoir is not gonna obligate, it would offset that to a disproportionate positive amount towards the usable, would it not?
I would hope so.
Yeah, because we're already doing what we're required, that's increasing. This doesn't represent, wow. So how much more are we being demanded here through the, I thought we kind of processed the FERC, but we're still actualizing those?
This is as of current.
It's not in there.
This is current conditions. The FERC conditions are not included in this pie graph.
How, can you guesstimate? Or could we have a future slide that would show it? And for the purposes of presentations, to my presentations when I talk to people, be interesting to show the delta and how it could be projected.
Sure, we
offset
can work on that.
As we participate in environmental support, which was the point that I also wanted to chime in on Will's point about the riparian and otherwise watery habitats and environments that we do create throughout our system, that it's a double-edged sword when we really started cranking it down. The South Wolf Creek was a perfect example. We did everything we're supposed to do, and everybody's screaming, what happened to the creek? And there are other spots. We had this spot there, Quail Estates or something. We wound up putting an orifice because we were getting sued that we were, as we fixed the canal, this was years back, and we wound up putting a 1/4-inch orifice to sustain the riparian development, or environment that had established over the years. Anyways, musings.
Okay.
But a request for, you know.
Yeah,
and
we
can
will,
work on
we
this.
will, we will give you an updated
good.
chart, and certainly as we move forward, updating this plan every 5 years or sooner, as required, we will potentially maybe make 2 charts, one that includes current and future obligations.
And we know what our obligations to FERC are going to be.
for the most
Yes,
part,
we
yes.
do.
So if you can show a projected, these are the finite ones, bring it to, well, I'm only on who for a little bit longer, but please.
It's a good point.
Yeah.
Okay, so in order to expedite this a little bit, stage 3 and 4 are clearly highlighted in your packet, and basically it's just a ramping up of the proposed reductions in stage 2. So basically we just take what's already there and ramp it up, limit the days of watering, limit the amount of sales, actually stop all new sales, and then cut back on the ag water sales. So,
Fair enough.
Jumped to the end there, but any other questions or public comment?
Thank you, Jim. We've raked you through the coals enough here, but we'll take public comment on this. I understand that this is a topic of great concern and interest, and I would hope that you could refrain from grandstanding on this issue.
Good.
Okay, moving on. We've done the general matters report, board of directors items. I'll start at Nancy's end.
On October 27th, I went to the Mountain Counties presentation. Kind of interesting. Connecting the Sierra water supply and the Delta in one meeting is a little risky, and actually they carried it off quite well. There was a lot of information about fish, and of course fish are the indicator species in the pumps, and so everybody is looking at fish and looking at smelt and counting fish. But I have to say, John, some of the figures they had on predator fish, particularly your bass, were really amazing, and I didn't bring them with me, but there are definitely people who are involved in the fish industry are pretty aware of this.
They are, in my opinion, remiss in their responsibilities. As just a typical example, on the Tuolumne River, the take of salmon, smolt, and fry is 93% by striped bass.
Yep.
They take tens of millions of salmon every year. At the same time the striped bass are doing that, the Department of Fish and Wildlife are collecting fishing licenses fees so that you could catch striped bass. And they are sustaining fish hatcheries raising salmon to feed the striped bass at the cost of tens of millions of dollars a year.
And that was verified.
Striped bass being a non-indigenous species introduced in 1930.
Right, as a crop,
Just
a cultural.
Everybody might not have known that part.
Okay.
Yep.
Fair enough.
Non-indigenous.
So, sorry, I don't have those figures, but let's leave it with that. I would say that putting the water master for the Delta on the same program and presenting it in the Sierras was a big step. And I think I'm going to meet with John Kingsbury in about 10 days because it intrigued me. His take is that we need to work together. So I always wonder what work together means. Does work together mean that we give up our water? You know, what is it that we're doing here? But I also know we don't have leverage in the legislature, and so the more allies we can get, the better off we are. So keep tuned, folks. Read Water Deeply, read Mountain County's blurbs that come out, and please realize that the state scene is a whole level that we have to be involved in. Otherwise, we're not going to be able to protect our water supply.
Just want to add to that, Director Weber, Maven's notebook as well.
Yes, thank you. Okay, and so then I'm going to come back with my request for the information on the reserves. It was supposed to come in 2 weeks, and 2 weeks is tomorrow, I believe.
We had some difficulty. You and I are scheduled for next week, after the who, right?
After who? Okay. I didn't get the confirmation, but I've got it now. So I'm glad that this information is going to come out. Thank you. That's all I have.
Well, yeah, I just have two things. Several weeks ago, I went to a state of the county, Placer County, presentation and a dinner. And the director of Parks and Rec was there, and he gave a presentation on Hidden Falls Regional Park. And some of you may know about about Hidden Falls. It's a park off of Mears Road and Mount Vernon Road, North Auburn. And it's on Coon Creek, and it has 30 miles of multi-use trails, and they are adding another 30 miles of multi-use trails soon. They're going through the environmental review process. It's 1,200 acres, and it's all along the whole Coon Creek, and you can cross both sides of Coon Creek to get there. And I believe it's all in the district, if I'm not mistaken. Most of it.
It's predominantly exclusion area.
Oh, it is?
Yeah.
Okay, well, it's predominantly.
But it's within the outer boundary of the district.
Oh, I thought the parking lot in that area.
Yeah, some parts of it are.
Yeah, okay. Anyway, they have no potable water there, which I found interesting. They have been, I think he had mentioned they're the victims of their own success, because it is so crowded there that people were parking literally everywhere on Mount Vernon Road and Mears Road. And so they put signs up there last year, and so now they have a reservation system. So if you all want to go there, I think it costs $8, and you have to reserve it in advance. He also talked about a regional concept of multi-use trails inter-county, which would be with Sacramento, to have a lot of those multi-use trails connect with trails in Placer County and also El Dorado County. So that's a proposal to try and connect all those to have many multi-use trails. So that was that. And then last night I went to the Farm Bureau, and they were quite busy last night. They had quite an agenda. Greg Jones and I went there, and so I only was able to give a brief talk about what we've been doing here in the last several months or years. I only got to 2 items. One, I mentioned the live streaming, which we have now, and the second thing I had mentioned is the continuing effort to reduce the herbicide use in the district, and mentioned that we have a committee formed. One of the committee members is on the board of directors of the Farm Bureau, Lauren Ost, and we have several past and present farm advisors on there, and there's 12 members, I believe. A committee formed to look into how we can better utilize other methods that we have. We have used many methods, and we've had a presentation here last year, but it's an attempt to sort of get around using so much Roundup and try and make it a more natural way, which is what I do when I was an organic farmer. We never used anything like that, but I didn't have the issues that we have here. So anyway, I briefly mentioned that, and that's all I have.
John?
Nope.
Scott?
Well, I did attend the Nevada County Farm Bureau dinner the other night, and wound up winning the raffle for about 20 pounds of apples. So my apples are back. Wanted to acknowledge the new pipeline and the excellent job presumably our new communications person is producing this. Correct. Very good job. And so that it didn't just fall on employee ears, I wanted to read into the record from Volume 38, Number 11, November 2017. I thought it was a very concise and appropriate account of NID's participation on some scale with the fires. And NID reconfigured its system and turned on crucial pump station to boost water pressure to the air base so they would have ample and timely supplies to mix its fire retardants properly. The firefighters can't do their job without all of us doing our job, because we provide the resource they need to fight the fires. We need to go out and make sure systems are safe, Rem Schersinger said. We were doing a lot. Thank you from the bottom of my heart, he had said to the employees. There is a table in here that I already referenced which issue this is. Thanks to those who participated in the fire support efforts. Operations technician, Thor Larson. Sue Sint came in on her day off. Chip Close. Water distribution. From the WDO side, we had Dennis Fry, who took a shot of retardant in his back. There's a picture in there. Josh Heine, Jeremy White, John Fropiano, Bob Page, and Aaron Fassler. This was the crew that worked on their normal day. The crew that we called in on their day off to help is Steve Hack, Robert Jackson, Paul Sokoloff, Sam Beaver, Joe Pitts, Matt Halverson, and Nathan Wasley. Electrical. Fire response from electrical was Greg Comejo, Jim Balek, both called in on their days off. They brought in temporary power to Jayhawk and Pleasant Valley pump stations. Water treatment. Treatment employees who worked during the fires were Kobe McCoy, Danny Granholm, and Joe Gobert on the normal shift, and on no overtime, it was, and on overtime, it was Kobe McCoy, Danny Granholm, and Shad Chittock. Maintenance, Bob McDonald came in on his day off. And the general manager led, as a good leader would, by ensuring that the flows in the ditches surrounding the Wildwood area were maintained at top flow levels. So I applaud NID and its staff. I think it was a fine article that reflected their...
I second that.
Okay. All the water used to put out the fire came from reservoirs.
Okay, good, thank you. Thank you. And it's also true. Timely. It's a good point. Okay. Peter mentioned the forum at Lake Wildwood last Thursday. It was well attended. Talking to Hank Weston, who was moderating the event, he assured me that probably less than 50% of the people there were residents of Lake Wildwood. The tone of the questions were somewhat confrontational but civil, and it was a good forum, and I look forward to more of these. I would note that Peter actually did not present at the forum, that Isaac Silverman sat in for him. I would say that there were sort of two important points that Isaac made. One is that NID doesn't need any more water. NID has tons of water, according to Isaac. He put up as documentation for that statement a table out of the Urban Water Management Plan, which showed that in average years, and I emphasize that, in average years, NID has plenty of water. Nobody's disputing that. This is not a question of how much water NID has in average years. It's how much water NID has in successive critically dry years, and I made that point rather clearly the other night. He also made the point that that NID's demand projections are not realistic, and that's obviously something that we'll have to examine very closely in future documents. But it was kind of a fun evening, and I look forward to doing it again. We'll see. Anyway, that's all I have for now. And with that, I'll take any comment on items to be considered in closed session. Hearing none, this meeting stands adjourned. Let me close closed session and open session. The attorney will read us out of closed session.
Okay, Mr. President, it is 1:45 and the announcement is that direction was given to legal counsel and real property negotiators.
Thank you very much. Without objection, I'll close open and adjourn the meeting. Thank you.